How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather SpongeBob. Today is January 14, 2022, and of course, we're going to focus on this major snowstorm that's currently impacting the Midwest and will later impact the Southeast and the Northeast, with potentially close to 2 feet of snow in some areas. And we'll also talk about the potentially life-threatening and very concerning ice threat that's expected to occur associated with this storm right around North Carolina and South Carolina, as it could just be devastating in that region by the amount of ice you're going to experience. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current radar for the United States, for at least the lower 48 of the United States. And here's that trough we've been talking to you guys about over the past several days, as now it has finally moved south and dumped a decent amount of snow throughout Minnesota, extending North Dakota as well. And now it's dumping a little bit of heavy snow right around Des Moines, Iowa at this time. And this is expected to continue over the next several hours for that area. And you see that in St. Louis, the snow is right at your doorstep. The low pressure system is expected to move southward along with a very strong jet stream at this time. And there's a lot of unstable air. You probably can't see it, but on the western side of this storm, there's a lot more. The temperatures are closer to the 50s and 60s, while to the northeast of this storm, the temperatures go down to the 30s and the 20s, and the temperature changes in such a short distance, to the point where there's a strong amount of instability located where this low is, and that's creating a lot more convection throughout the Midwest, and that's expected to continue as it heads further southward and moves into the Northeast later this weekend. So if we were to take a look, you see that there's rain showers just to the south of it, which shows that there's warm air to the south of it. So we should see the area of snow pretty much get smaller as it moves southward once it encounters a little bit more warm air, but we expect it to expand again once it encounters the cooler air that's sort of trapped in the Northeast at this time, that's bringing very cold temperatures for this weekend in the Northeast. And we're gonna see snow. We're gonna see the snowfall close to 1 to 2 feet of snow in some areas in the Northeast. So this is something you're gonna want to keep in mind throughout the Northeast. Now let's take a look at the warnings as of right now. You see that for a lot of the Midwest, you're under winter storm warnings extending through Iowa, southern Minnesota at this time. You were under winter storm warnings throughout Minnesota and North Dakota, but now they have ended, obviously because the low pressure has moved southward, so there's no longer impacts expected in those areas. But you see winter weather advisories are issued just south of that, and now we're having winter storm watches extend all the way to Pennsylvania, as it's becoming pretty much inevitable at this point. You're going to experience a major snowstorm, so it's definitely something you want to keep a close. And you see that towards the Carolinas, we do have ice warnings issued, which represents that there's going to be potentially an extremely impactful ice event. So you need to pay close attention to that. I think it's going to be very concerning right around the Carolinas, as you could experience up to a half an inch of ice, as I'll show you in the ice accumulation map very, very soon. But first, let's take a look at the European model when it comes to the radar. So we're only around pretty much 24 hours out, a little bit less than that, from this snowstorm in the southeast. And from the northeast, we're only just after 48 hours out from this event. So the forecast at this point is fairly certain for the most part. We're going to see at best minuscule changes. Don't expect any drastic changes with the forecast at this point. It's pretty much certain that you guys will experience an extremely major snowstorm extending through the southeast and into the northeast. So that's definitely something you want to keep a close eye on in those areas. Now let's move forward. You see that the snow eventually does extend to St. Louis, but we're going to see the warm air sort of, like I said, make the area of snow smaller as it moves further southward. But we should see it expand, because look at in the northeast, we're seeing all this cold air trapped right around this area, and as this low pressure system continues to move northward, we're going to see the snow area once again expand, because of course the temperatures will be cold enough to the support for snow, unlike the southeast, where for the most part the temperature should be above freezing, where we'll only see a very small area of snow, maybe extending through the eastern portion of Oklahoma, Arkansas. Tennessee might get involved in some snow, but especially the Carolinas will certainly get involved in that small area of snow, and it could be rather impactful because we're going to see a ridge that's going to bring a strong northwesterly flow of cold air towards this low pressure system, while this low pressure system is trying to bring that warm Gulf of Mexico air further northward, and that convergence of this Arctic air and this warm air at the same area is gonna be one of the primary causes that's going to lead to an extremely major ice event for the Carolinas that could be devastating. And I think that since there's going to be so much convergence between this cold air and the strong southerly flow associated with this low pressure system, it's going to lead to just a lot more rapid convection and rapid intensification of this low pressure system as this moves northward, as this convergence is going to force a lot of that warm air up, and the buoyancy is going to be just very high with these air molecules and the water vapor for a lot of convection to occur right around southeast, for heavy snowfall to occur. And if we were to continue to move forward, you see the low pressure system gradually intensifies. We see a drop down 988 millibars, and we see heavy snow extending through the western portion of Virginia. West Virginia, Pennsylvania is pretty much all in the snow, and it's going to be, again, like I said, a close call for the big cities. However, it seems like the computer models are now leaning towards maybe the major cities missing out on the snow entirely, while the forecast based on the European model still wants to bring snow to Philadelphia and a little bit to New York City. It doesn't think it's going to snow for long enough for any sort of major accumulation to occur, let's say over 1 inch at this time. It's going to be very close because in New York City, if you only go 20 miles to the northwest, you're already in the 3 to 5 inch range when it comes to snowfall accumulation. But in New York City, the current forecast is that you're not going to experience any snow from this, and same goes for Philadelphia. Again, any minuscule changes will make a big difference, but at this point, I'd sort of lean more towards the fact that you won't experience any sort of snowfall accumulation in New York City and Philadelphia. If you want to see snow, you'll need to go further northwest of the Interstate 95 corridor in those cities. However, in places like Washington, D.C., which is further westward, you will experience at least a decent amount of snow. The current forecast from the European model is right around 3 to 6 inches, which is a sizable amount of snow, but it won't be nearly as much as if you go further westward, where you're going to experience well over 6 inches and over a foot in some areas of the interior Northeast. So that's definitely something you want to be aware of, but even if it doesn't snow, there's also that possibility of there's also the threat of strong winds with this. So even if you're not necessarily going to experience snow along the coast, you got to be worried about the strong winds that are going to be associated with this low pressure system, because of course with a low pressure system this powerful, the winds are going to be very strong, as the cold air is pretty much attempting to fill into that very buoyant air towards the eastern half of this storm, and that creates wind because of course the denser air, as it attempts to fill in, that creates wind because of how because of the movement of the air molecules when we see the cooler, denser air attempt to move in to the lighter, more buoyant, warmer air that's located towards the eastern half of this storm. So this will be a big wind threat, and that could lead to coastal flooding concerns along the East Coast, as we do have coastal flood advisories issued for New Jersey, extending to Delaware, and coastal flood watches extending through Long Island. And the winds will come directly from the east, which means that this won't be one of those scenarios where the winds will be pushing off the shore. All this wind is going to be piling on the shore, so coastal flooding is much more prone during scenarios like this, where we're seeing a strong easterly flow associated with this low pressure system. So that's definitely something you want to be aware of, and you see that we're going to see a strong southeasterly flow right around Maine, so New England will also get involved. But with some coastal flooding. So this is something you want to keep in mind. So let's take a look at the forecasted wind from the European model to get a good idea of how strong the winds will be. And right now there's a decent amount of wind associated with this low pressure system because, like I said, there is a decent amount of instability in the Midwest right now that's inducing this convection and the movement of air molecules. But it should only enhance as it enters the East Coast, and that's for a few reasons. For one thing is that the Atlantic Ocean is going to be a lot warmer than the air temperature towards the western side of this storm. So, of course, that will enhance the instability because the air above the warm Atlantic water will pretty much be very light and buoyant, and the cooler, denser air on the western side of this storm will want to fill into that. And also, this storm should just experience a little bit more instability associated with this strong northwesterly flow this ridge is going to bring to the northeast, and that should enhance the wind. So it's taking a bit long to load. Hopefully this loads up, but I'm going to show you guys that there's just going to be a strong amount of wind associated with this storm, especially in the northeast will be the worst and could lead to coastal flooding. So let's just wait for this to load up. It does seem to be loading up. So okay, it's loading up just a little bit. I apologize for the long load times, but you're going to see that if you were to take a look at this model, the winds will be very strong, and you're probably asking me how strong the winds will be. Well, along the coast, you should see wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, and that wind will be compounded by the possibility of coastal flooding. You see that associated with this low. We do see at least a decent amount of wind. If we were to continue to move forward, that should only enhance if we were to move towards where the East Coast, where the winds should increase. So this doesn't seem to be working, but I can assure you that the winds will definitely rapidly increase throughout the East Coast. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Let's take a look at the Futurecast radar to really see when you should expect the snowfall in some areas. So this is where we're at right now, right around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. But if we were to continue to move forward, I'd say the snow will arrive in St. Louis right around the 1 a.m. time frame, and it should continue throughout the overnight hours. But like I said, since this warm air is going to pretty much swallow up a lot of this precipitation, we're going to see less precipitation in the form of snowfall and more precipitation in the form of rainfall. And continuing to move southward, we do see that rain eventually impacts Memphis, and we will see some snow in Arkansas, but not a lot because, like I said, the area of snow won't be very large. And then you see that we do see a lot of mixing occurring right around the Carolinas, and that's definitely very concerning. We could see ice in excess of maybe half an inch in some areas, which is just devastating, guys. You might be thinking that half an inch of ice isn't all that, but I'm telling you guys, half an inch of ice will cause major problems. I'm talking about just roads becoming completely impassable. Power outages are likely. It's just going to be an all-around mess for the Carolinas as a result of a half an inch of ice. And if we were to continue to move forward, you see that right around Sunday night, the snow approaches Washington, D.C., and this snow is pretty much right at Pennsylvania's doorstep, and we're seeing heavy rain on the eastern side of this low pressure system, which is also another thing you need to keep in mind throughout the Carolinas. Maybe there is a possibility of some flash flooding associated with some of these thunderstorm squalls along the eastern half of the storm, and you see the snow eventually does move into Pennsylvania. We do see a little bit of snow right around northern New Jersey, and maybe a little bit of mixing in snow in Philadelphia, but the current forecast is that it isn't going to snow for long enough for any sort of major snow accumulation to occur in the major cities. So I'd assume that you guys won't experience snow, but do not rule out the possibility of maybe a big shift, or at least a minuscule shift in the forecast, making a big difference in terms of snowfall accumulation in those major cities. So make sure to still at least be aware of the storm, especially since there is still that major wind threat like I've been talking to you guys about. But here's the total ice accumulation, and look between South Carolina and North Carolina. You could receive up to a half an inch of ice, and like I said, that's definitely concerning and very concerning in my opinion. You guys need to prepare. This could even extend to Atlanta as well. Even if you're above a tenth of an inch of ice, that still could cause major problems. So you don't need to be in the a quarter of an inch to a half an inch of ice category to experience major impacts from this, because Raleigh, North Carolina could get involved. Charlotte is right in the middle of the worst of the ice, which is definitely very, very concerning that this major ice threat is going to affect such a large population in a major city. So make sure to prepare throughout North Carolina, because this ice threat could be completely devastating in that area. So let me show you guys my snowfall forecast for the next pretty much this weekend. So of course that I removed the snowfall from the Minnesota and North Dakota, because of course snow has passed for you guys, but right around Iowa you should expect 6 to 12 inches of snow before the storm is all said and done. So this should be considered major for you guys. 3 to 6 inches just south of that. Like I said, the area of snow won't be as large because the warm air is gonna pretty much overtake this area of snow, but this area should again expand further northward. So if I were to go over the major cities, Charlotte, North Carolina, I'd say you'll experience right around 3 to 6 inches of snow, but it should be compounded by a major ice threat, so make sure to prepare in that area. Washington DC, I'd say you should expect 3 to 6 inches, and then Philadelphia and New York City, I'd say maybe expect an inch of snow, but that's about it for now. But again, you're not very far from the 3 to 6 inch category, so make sure to keep that in mind. And then extending through Boston, you see that you are also along the border of 1 to 3 to no snowfall accumulation, so make sure to keep that in mind as well. But just in the northwest of this low pressure system, you should expect 12 to 24 inches of snow. So this should be a major storm for you guys, so make sure to keep that in mind. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. I hope you guys have a good day.